Everybody, welcome to the Planning Commission meeting for Thursday, December 16th, 2010. Let's start the meeting on a note of agreement. If you can, rise and join with me in saluting our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Kathy, would you like to do the roll call, please?
Sure. Mr. Donayo? Here. Mr. Sevison? Here. Mr. Gray? Absent.
He's
Mr.
not
Moss? Here. Mr. Crabb? Absent. Mr. Johnson?
Here.
Mr. Brentnell?
Here. Okay, first item is report from the planning director. Your microphone's not on for some reason. Maybe I'm just going deaf.
I will speak loudly.
Oh, yeah, that helps.
December 14th, last Tuesday, the Board of Supervisors had their 1 December meeting. They honored Supervisor Rockholm for his years of service to Placer County. There was a Williamson Act contract out in the Lincoln area for 113 acres that was approved by the board. And the Enclaves project in Granite Bay, which was previously reviewed by your commission, you had recommended denial for that general plan amendment and rezone. Based upon the recommendation the Planning Commission forwarded, the applicant went back and redesigned the project, reduced the density from 26 units to 13 units, so it was consistent with the density on the surrounding properties. And based upon that redesign, the Board of Supervisors approved the general plan amendment and rezone for densities consistent with the surrounding properties. The board referred back to the Planning Commission the tentative subdivision map. So the applicant is now going to design a new subdivision map based upon the new densities that are permitted on the site. It will go to the Granite Bay MAC and then come to your commission sometime early next year. Speaking of early next year, the January 13th meeting at this point is going to be canceled. And on your January 27th agenda, you'll have your election of officers. And at this point, we have one item, which is a recycled asphalt facility up on the Interstate 80 corridor. I'm working with staff right now to bring a couple of more items to make it worth your while to come in here. So that's it for now. Any questions?
So there is a 27th meeting in January?
Yes, there is.
The January 13th meeting, you say it looks for now like it's going to be canceled. Does that mean that it is?
Let's assume that at this point it's canceled, because with the schedules we have with the holidays, we just can't get anything on it. I don't see anything pressing coming in. So assume that the January 13th agenda is canceled.
All right, well, my wife wants to go somewhere, and I said, nah, we can't go till after the 13th.
Now you get to.
Now we get to, woohoo!
Now she's already found somebody else to take, huh?
Yeah, much better looking too there.
There have been several questions from the commission on the Homewood Resort project up at Lake Tahoe. You noticed you were up at Lake Tahoe last week for the Planning Commission meeting, and that item was not on your agenda. Staff continues to work with the applicant to finalize the draft EIR. It's staff's anticipation that the draft EIR will be ready for public circulation sometime in the middle of January. And so we would anticipate a hearing before the Planning Commission on the draft EIR probably in February. Because of the interest in the Homewood area on this project, we would have a special meeting up at Lake Tahoe, so those residents would not have to travel so far to provide testimony if they would like to. So it's anticipated sometime in mid-February we will be having a Tahoe hearing.
Are there any other of our decisions that are pending appeal at the Board of Supervisors?
The one that I am aware of is the Livingston Concrete. The applicant was going to go back and provide additional information on air quality issues, but they have not completed those studies, and so that is on hold right now. Everything else, I believe, has been addressed by the board.
Very good. Okay, at this point, is there, not yet, George. Is there anybody in the public who would like to address the commission on something that's not on today's agenda? If so, you're free to come forward at this point. Seeing nobody, now, George. This is the 10:05 item on the draft environmental impact report for Timberline. George?
Thank you, Mr. Brentnall. Today before the Planning Commission is a hearing to take public comments on the Timberline Draft Environmental Impact Report. The proposed project consists of a continuing care retirement community, a commercial center, and a loop trail to be developed on Auburn Recreation District property to the northeast of the site. Just to give you a little idea of what I'm talking about. Here's the commercial core. This is part of the continuing care retirement community. This is where the units will be. This is Richardson, the extension of Richardson through to Auburn Recreation District. We are presently essentially right here across the street. So that large open area that you see across the street is where this project is proposed. The proposed project would include up to 858 residential units, of which 780 would be in the continuing care community, with 78 units being apartment lofts on top of commercial or professional offices in the commercial core area, which would be on these two structures right here. As part of the environmental impact report, areas of controversy were identified. They're as follows: increased traffic and congestion, impacts to air quality, impacts to oak woodlands, noise impacts, impacts to visual resources, increased hazardous materials resulting from the project, potential disturbance or destruction of cultural or historical resources on site, increased demand for public services. The document that was prepared for this project addressed all those areas of controversy and many more, as you know from having reviewed it. I just wanted to reiterate the purpose of the hearing today is to take public comments. It's on the draft environmental impact. It's not an opportunity to either discuss the merits of the project or frankly discuss the merits of the environmental impact report. It's simply to comment, and when we receive all those comments, we'll respond to those comments at the end of the review period, which ends December 27th of this year. I don't think I have anything else unless you have anything.
Any questions or comments for George? I have a quick one, George. What's the semicircle that we see a segment of across the kind of right-hand
That is
corner?
the
Aircraft
Auburn
overflight zone?
Yeah, it's the overflight zone. As a matter of fact, originally, so you know, the applicant proposed more apartments along here, but because of the overflight zone, it's restricted to simply a little bit here and on these two buildings. But that's the overflight zone.
Well, as you know, if an airplane's going to crash, it's certainly going to crash within that zone. As we have an expert in aircraft crashes right here on our panel.
Right. Yeah. And to eliminate confusion, if you're wondering why, one other point that you may or may not be aware of that I should bring to your attention, that this is the airport overflight zone, but when that was put in place, the reason there is things that wouldn't seem to fit here, like a hospital and that sort of thing, is because this was determined to be a zone of exemption at the time that the overflight zone was put in because of the existing uses such as Auburn Faith Hospital and some other sort of elder care.
They were already there.
They were already there, so they were exempted.
Yeah. And we have better trained pilots now. They only crash within the zone.
Right. They only aim for Bell Road. Anything else?
No, I guess not. Then we'll just take comments today.
Yes.
No debate or discussion of any sort.
Exactly.
Okay,
George,
thank you,
want to
George.
talk about the sign-in, please?
Oh, you want folks to sign the log when they come up so that they can get the...
Yes. Right here we have a login, so when you come up, if they would put their name, their address, and email, so we can make sure that when we respond to their comments, that they get a copy of that response.
Not typically.
Thank you.
Okay, now, does the project proponent get an opportunity to say anything, or is this not the time?
No.
Okay, what you're trying to say is, No.
No.
All right.
I mean, they have the opportunity to comment, but normally they don't.
All right. Very good. Thank you, George. Well, ladies and gentlemen, then this is the opportunity for you to make your comments on the record with respect to the draft EIR on this particular project. We won't be having any discussion or debate on the matter. We'll just take the comments and they'll be responded to in the final EIR. With that, is there anybody who wants to make any comments? Please, sir, just come forward, give us your name. And when you're done, if you sign that little piece of paper there, they'll make sure that the written responses, you get a copy of it.
Okay, thank you. My name is Jeff Tupen. I'm a resident of Bell Meadows that abuts this proposed development to the west. Just a couple of quick comments. I would like to suggest to this commission and to the county that the county schedule a separate and a second opportunity for the public to give feedback on this draft EIR during non-business hours, if at all possible. I think that if this weren't at 10:05 on a workday, we'd find that there'd be quite a bit more interest and participation in this single event. So if you could take that into consideration. I'm going to start. I've got 3 points. I want to start with the most important. I'm pleased to see that the applicant, per CEQA requirements, has prepared 2 alternatives to the proposed build alternative and then a no-build alternative. Both of the alternatives to the build alternative, the cluster development and the low or the reduced density development, really make headway towards making for a better project, I believe. But what I'd like to suggest is that the applicant consider developing at least one additional development alternative that combines elements of both the cluster development and the reduced density development. In doing something like that, the applicant and the developer, I think, could better be protective of existing cultural resources, biological resources, and recreational opportunities that are associated with the mature blue oak woodlands to the left or the west of the project, to the north near Deer Ridge, and to the south near Tahoe. And, boy, I don't want to advance this. Which one is the laser, George? So I think most people in the room understand the lay of the land here, but the Tahoe development being generally in this area, Bell Meadows here, and Deer Ridge to the north. What you don't see in this project proposal, and you can just see remnants of, is this extensive blue oak woodland that essentially covers almost the entirety of the western lobe of this parcel area or project area. In combining the 2 alternatives to the proposed build alternative, these blue oak woodlands, fairly substantial cultural resources associated with these riparian corridors where I'm showing the laser here, could be protected, or at least impacts reduced. And very important here, existing connectivity with the Tahoe neighborhood, the Bell Meadows neighborhood, and Deer Ridge neighborhoods could be maintained with the mitigation property, the ARD mitigation property to the north, and the ARD regional park facility associated thereof. So these are things that we have brought up on the record. I, as the former president of Bell Meadows Homeowners Association, and others, to help the applicant, prior to this point, develop better alternatives. Again, I'm pleased to see that there are 2 better alternatives that are proposed relative to the currently proposed alternative, but I think that the applicant can do a much better job, still have a profitable project, accomplish the purpose and need of and be far more protective of existing cultural, biological, and recreational resources. I think at that I'll turn the mic over and I'll save my more detailed comments for the written response time. I guess for the record, I'd like to request, if at all possible, that written deadline for submitted comments, which is currently 2 days after Christmas, be extended somewhat for the same reasons, to allow people more time, given the lateness of the season and the year, to appropriate or comment appropriately on the sufficiency of the EIR.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Do you want to sign the log there? And George, the deadline currently is December 27th, is it not? And
That is the end of the 45-day review period, December 27th.
if folks can't come here to make their comments, they're welcome to submit written comments. Is that not correct?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it. Is there anybody else who wants to speak? Dr. Smith, you look like you're spring-loaded to come up.
I'll give others a chance.
Okay. Please come forward.
My name is Kim Siegelkoff. I am a resident of Deer Ridge. And I wish to comment on the EIR in the Section 6 Visual Resources portion. I live on Golden Eagle, which one is this? I live right in here, second house. View 4 of the EIR indicates that the development of the proposed projects, residents along the northern border of the project would not be afforded views of the proposed project, as existing trees and vegetations block all views. They do not. In fact, as you can see from this chart that you have up, there's no blockage right there, none at all. Additionally, Golden Eagle sits higher than the property that is proposed to be developed. And as a result, the mitigation of screening landscaping would not do any good. It completely blocks the view. It completely, I can see clear across the entire project. Additionally, I'm concerned about the glare. I'm concerned about the density. I would also like to comment that the comments made earlier about the response time to the EIR, I think should be extended. Additionally, the notification of this meeting was very, very limited to people within 300 feet of the project. So many of my neighbors did not get notified at all. One last comment I would have is on the end of Golden Eagle, there is an access. It says fire access. My concern is there any other traffic that will be part of that access, workers, maintenance, or anything like that will increase traffic on Golden Eagle? I think that's about it. Thank you.
Okay, Kim, if you want to sign the sheet there, tell your neighbors that this wasn't the time that we were going to debate and discuss the final EIR. This was just to take in comments, and they can get the same result by submitting something in writing, and that will be responded to as well. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? I guess it's just you. Oh, one more.
Hi, my name is Robert Simon. I live right in this area here on Sunset Terrace, and my main comment is that all these buildings here, these three-story jobs, are going to be blocking a beautiful view that we have of the Sierras. And if they can make these 2 stories and make flat roofs, that would be perfect, because, you know, we have a nice view. We don't want to lose that. If we want to sell our homes and everything, that's an asset to our location. That's basically my only comment.
Thank you for your comments. If you want to put your name there, we'll make sure you get a copy of the responses. Anybody else? It's you, Doc.
I guess they forced my hand, but good morning. Good to see you all again. I'm Dale Smith, 3410 Sunshine Way. I live less than 1,000 yards from this monster. I guess that qualifies me as a NIMBY. And I and many of my neighbors are residents of North Auburn community, are deeply concerned about this project for many reasons, most of them based in law and just plain old common sense. Douglas Foy, the executive director of the Conservation Law Foundation, defended or defined rather, NIMBY, quote, as one who cares about their quality of life. There's nothing wrong with being a NIMBY if a project is going to destroy your backyard. Well, this project's going to destroy my back, front, and side yards in the sense of the word. Where I have a little peace and quiet, now I'm going to have lots of light, I'm going to have lots of activity and everything else. And I'd like to get another thing straight about these statements that are being made. They say these environmentalists are a special interest group. No way. Developers who are going to directly profit from a project are the actual special interest groups, not citizens who have no financial stake, who are fighting for the public interest and the long-term good of the whole Auburn community. Now, this hearing is to determine the validity and the adequacy of the DEIR. A cursory examination by our team has shown that it's neither adequate nor is it valid. Why? Number one, there are 3 different build-out projections for the project in this DEIR. Now, a draft DEIR should be evaluating one project using one set of numbers so that the results are consistent throughout the document. This DEIR does not do that, and that's wrong. Instead of using numbers from previous studies, the county should have extended the DEIR time period so we could work with consistent numbers. Secondly, the plans call for development on the west side where the existing residential area abuts against it. This area should serve, and I guess that you have to push a button here somewhere? On the top. Well, oh, here we go. Okay, that's right in this area, right in here. I happen to live right about there, by the way. Now, that west side development, where the residential abuts against it, is an area that could and should be dedicated as open space buffer between the existing development. It's not just common sense, it's also CEQA law. And that's one of the comments that will be made in the detailed comments we make, and we'll back it up with the chapter of the law. Now, number 3, the biological habitat chapter says infill projects on vacant land will have impacts on local wildlife. That's an argument, again, for the cluster development and dedicating open space to the west, thus lowering the total number of residential units and acres of land developed. The earlier gentleman said about the 3-story buildings. One thing I'd like to bring out, this is going to be in an elderly care facility. It's going to have very, very strong oxygen requirements. And there is at least one person on your panel that knows all about oxygen and how difficult it is to deal with in fire. And when you have 3-story buildings, how does the current fire department deal with that problem? They don't deal with it very well, I'm sure you. Now, number 4, it's astonishing that LOS, E, and F are acceptable on major arterials that are currently at A and B. And that's the Bell Road, Highway 49 intersection, Richardson, Bell Road, and Airport Road. These are connectors, and LOS, E, and F are just simply not acceptable. And this project could well violate the most important tenets of what has been called the best environmental laws in the United States, our own California Environmental Quality Act. And finally, the name timberland at Auburn is both a joke and a tragedy. The most beautiful timber in that acreage, which runs just in back of the houses on Tahoe Street, will be removed to put in 20 ever so sweet little villas right up against the back fences of the houses on Tahoe. Somehow, that seems wrong. Check the law, I think you'll find it is wrong. And I would urge the Planning Commission to send this whole project back to staff for a correct and complete DEIR. And that's just with a cursory examination. When we go through it with a fine-tooth comb, we're going to find a lot of things that aren't correct. And yet today, the staff is asking you to approve a DEIR as being complete and correct. Let me assure you, it's not.
The staff is asking us just to take comments. So we're delighted to
Well,
have
that's
yours.
not what, you know, it's not what it says Jerry, it's not what it says in the notification. It says that your job is to verify that this is correct and adequate.
Well,
Now, if that's not right, I'd be happy if that's not correct.
we do that with the help of folks like yourself who make comments and then they get responded to in the final one. Thank you, Dale, for your comments. Apparently there are others that want to speak. Come on up.
My name's Eric Hill, and I live in Bell Meadows. I actually walk this property every day with my dog, have for 7 years, and it's great. I will miss that opportunity, but I also think this is a very, very worthwhile project, and I think they've done a great job. I'm not going to comment on individual items in that. I just want to make a comment that we heard all this same crap about Home Depot. For 10 years, Dale Smith and his buddies stopped that project. We finally got it built. And we finally got Home Depot built, and all the gloom and doom and all the promises of all the things that were going to happen to Auburn and everything else, none of them have come to fruition. It's an excellent store, hasn't put anybody out of business except 84 Lumber, which it should have. And so we sat there and thrashed on this project for 10 years for absolutely nothing. We're doing the same thing on the Costco project. We're going to thrash on that simply because these people don't want any development anywhere in our town, and we've got to allow expansion. Personally, in a few years, I'd like to live out here in what they're building. So anyway, just remember that the boy who cries wolf eventually,
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else wants to make comments? Yeah, I thought you stood up about the same time that Dale Smith did.
Good morning. Matt Bartholomew, 3306 Sunset Terrace, which is, hey, got it. This little strip of white space between the gazebo and the legend on the map. And happen to live next door to Mr. Simon here, who commented previously. Just a couple general areas of concern with the DEIR with respect to Chapter 6, Visual Resources, and Chapter 9, Noise. The DEIR characterizes the views from the west, which is the Sunset Terrace area, I would assert inaccurately, and they need to be beefed up a little bit. And I'll respond in more detail in writing separately. Particular concern is the impact of the three-story structures with the peaked roof on the views from the west, and that be more clearly and accurately defined within the DEIR. And the report concludes that the impact on visual resources is less than significant, but those of us on Sunset Terrace regard the elimination of view of this area as not less than significant. And I'm curious, the report studies the impact of the three-story structures with the peaked roofs on visual impact. It doesn't seem to analyze any other option for those three-story structures. Perhaps it should identify or discuss the impact of other options, two-story structures, something else. With regard to Chapter 9, noise, Table 9-11 identifies a 17.7 decibel increase proposed along Richardson, north of Bell, which is presumably most of the project, and identifies that it exceeds county standards, but I didn't find any discussion of how that's going to be, or should be, or will be mitigated. Did not see a clear discussion of loading dock noise and specifically whether backup alarms are included in that analysis. I'm also curious if garbage hauling is included in the restrictions for the 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. loading, delivery, and so forth activities. And a procedural question, later on in Chapter 9, there's a section that states, The project includes an entitlement requiring Placer County approval for an exception to the Placer County property line exterior noise level standard, and goes on stating something about upon county approval of the requested exception and so forth. The DER seems to treat this as a conclusion. I'm not clear from reading the report whether that's a done deal or if that's something that will be discussed at future hearings. So we'd look for some more clarification on that item. And those are my comments in a nutshell. Thank you.
And Matt, my understanding is, if I heard you correctly, you're going to also submit some written comments for the record?
Yes, sir.
Okay, before the deadline, don't forget that.
Right.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. I appreciate you taking the time to come in here today. Is there anybody else wants to provide comments on this matter, Timberline at Auburn? Seeing nobody moving, then I will close the public hearing on this matter. George, the staff report says you recommend that we direct you to respond to the oral and written comments in the final EIR. I don't believe we need to direct you to do that, do we?
We'll do that. The one thing I would like to add, though, is anyone who is interested in being on our mailing list, please put your name on this list. They can also contact me directly if they would like to be put on a mailing list when we send anything out with regard to the project. So anyone who knows anyone who would like to be included, please call me or call our department and say you would like to be put on the mailing list for Timberline. Right now we have a list. Our notice is, we noticed 142 surrounding property owners and 43 interested properties, or interested parties. So anyone else is free to get on the interested parties list, and we'll notice them as well.
Okay. With that, then, this matter is closed and will be in, what? Oh. I think we're going to close this matter anyway, and we'll be in recess till 10:50, which is when the next item commences. If you want to sign up the list, now's a great time to do it.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeff. Yep.
Proceed with the 10:50 item, which is the vesting tentative subdivision map for Riolo Vineyards Parcel J. Lisa?
Good morning. Let me just flip forward. As you can see here, this is the original specific plan area that was approved by the board last year, back in May of 2009. It's located out in western Placer County, along Walerga, PFE, and Watt. This is the specific plan ownership as it is currently. You can tell the Homes by Town own a little more than 60%. This is Parcel J, which we're going to be discussing today. Here's an aerial of the specific plan area with Parcel J outlined, the 30.4 acres. In May of 2009, the Board of Supervisors took final action to approve the Riolo Vineyard specific plan. And those entitlements included the general plan and community plan amendments, approval of the Riolo Vineyard specific plan, development standards, and design guidelines. There was a rezoning of all participating properties to the specific plan zoning. And there was approval of a DA development agreement between the county and the developer, approval of a large and small lot vesting tentative subdivision map, and certification of the Riolo Vineyard specific plan environmental impact report. And there was the acceptance of a public facilities financing plan. As you can see here, it's a little light in here, but you can see, the various developments, Doyle Ranch, Morgan Creek, the Dry Creek proposed park area, Silver Creek approved subdivision. Down here is the middle school, the area of the grade school where it's proposed, the church, another approved subdivision. And as we move along, the original Riolo Vineyard specific plan anticipated development to occur from the west to the east, as you can tell from the letters. What the applicant is proposing is to start over on the east side with parcel J and to transfer 9 residential lots from phase E and 11 residential lots from phase F to parcel J. The overall construction of 933 residential units for the entire specific plan remains unchanged. All they're asking for is a phase change and a density transfer to this. The existing specific plan, the zoning of parcel J is low-density residential, which allows for lots of approximately 5,500 square feet and larger, which equates out to 1 to 5 dwelling units per acre. What the applicant is proposing are lots of approximately 7,200 square feet or about 3.5 dwelling units per acre, and therefore it is consistent with the already approved specific plan. This next slide just shows you the Class 2 bicycle trail. Oops, I keep doing that. Class 2 bicycle trail, which will go through parcel J and along the roadways and eventually connect with the rest of the development. On December 8th, we did take this to the MAC for an action item, and the MAC voted to shelve the proposed project. They wrote a letter, which you have a copy of, and the planning issues centered around the density. And with its approval last year of the Rio Vineyard specific plan, the Board of Supervisors determined that the plan was consistent with the Dry Creek West Placer community plan. The project before you today is 107 lots, residential units, and it's found to be consistent with the Rio Vineyard specific plan. Density transferred are allowed under Section 8.3 of the specific plan. And as stated earlier, there will be no net increase in the overall amount of residential units. It'll stay at 933. The applicant is just requesting the transfer from the other phases. In accordance with the Rio Vineyard specific plan, the Environmental Review Committee analyzed the proposed project, including the additional density transfer under the subsequent conformity environmental review process as set forth in Chapter 8 of the Rio Vineyard specific plan, and determined that the proposed project is within the scope of the analysis of the previously certified EIR, and that no additional analysis is required under CEQA. No new impacts nor increases to previously disclosed impacts will result, and no new mitigation measures are required. It was determined that the compliance with mitigation measure for air quality could be accomplished by incorporating project level specific criteria, and that's been included within the addendum that is also attached to your staff report. With that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve this vesting tentative subdivision map subsequent to and adopt the addendum to the previously certified Rio Vineyard specific plan, subject to the findings and conditions of approval contained within the staff report. And I can answer any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you, Lisa. Are there any questions for her from anybody on the commission? Richard?
Yeah, I guess I kind of have a thought. I don't know if there's a direct answer to it, but when I look at the map, I can see where, in essence, for now, there's really just one way in and one way out, recognizing there is a emergency exit onto PFE.
Correct.
road.
There's this entrance here, and there's an emergency vehicle access here. There is going to be a light, a pedestrian crossing, and a light for the kids to cross to the school over here.
And that would be just available to emergency vehicles that want
Correct.
to come in from that way.
Correct.
And also, I can see where in the future there's plans to, of course, add onto those roads and connect, and so you get a lot of circulation in the future. But I guess where I'm kind of struggling a little bit is, oftentimes if you look at it from an emergency access standpoint, the emergency responders want to have a way to get in, but the residents in the neighborhood only have one way out, and so they don't have options available to them. So in a way, it doesn't take into account the public safety of the residents themselves. They become dependent upon the emergency responders to let them out that way if they need to go out that way. So I guess I'm just kind of struggling a little bit with, how long in the future those roads will be connected up and there will be adequate circulation in this area that gives people the option to move around and go out more than one way.
Right, as you noted, these stubs here will connect eventually to the other portion of the Riola Vineyards, and there will be an exit over in this area. I don't know if Rebecca Tabor from Engineering and Surveying wants to address the other portion of that.
I'm not sure you're making a record. I can't hear you. Is that?
My light's on.
There you
go.
go. Okay.
Rebecca Tabor, Engineering and Surveying. The EVA easement and connection to PFE Road, it's intended for egress and ingress for residents as well as emergency response for fire trucks and responders. So the intent is that would serve both purposes.
If it's got a gate on it, how do they get out?
It's a hinged gate, breakaway bollards. It's not locked. So, and we did talk with Bob Eichholz from Placer Fire about this. The design will be further worked through during the improvement plan process, but the preliminary concept and location of the EVA has been agreed upon as adequate for fire's needs and to provide the ingress and egress for residents. As to timing for the future road connections, perhaps the applicant may be able to speak to that later.
Okay. So I guess what I'm hearing is this gate, if you're a resident, you don't have to have a sheriff or a fire truck there to let you out. There'll be some way for them to get through the gate.
That's correct. They don't have to wait for it to be opened. It's the intent is, and it would be understood through sale of property. The HOA would be aware that this is a unlocked gate.
Okay.
And they would have to explain that, and make sure that everybody living there understands, but it wouldn't be locked. It would be something that could be pushed down and then become open and drivable.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Jeff?
Lisa, you said that additional air quality issues would be mitigated through specific building practices and what have you. I guess I'm a little confused. There's no density change, no more lots. No, how did we get air quality issues that we have to now mitigate?
When air quality reviewed the analysis that was done, they looked at it and they just wanted to bring in some more project-specific language that would clarify the existing mitigation measure. It didn't change the mitigation measure, it just clarified it for project level analysis. Is that what you were asking? Kind of, sort of.
I guess I just started taking notes when you were talking at the end there, and like I say, I heard you mention that there were project-specific building things that would be applied to mitigate the air quality issue, and I'm asking myself, how did we get an air quality issue something new if we're not changing numbers of lots or what have you?
Oh, and Mr. Chair, if I might, that is part of the reason for the errata sheet, which is before you today, was to provide clarification and consistency with the certified EIR. So there was no ambiguity between the language in the EIR and these conditions of approval. The errata sheet provides that clarification. Because this EIR was certified and done at a project level for this site, you are correct in stating that the ability to add new requirements is limited. And so the reason for the errata sheet, which has been discussed with the applicant, was to bring back consistency with the previously adopted requirements in the EIR.
Does that answer your question, Jeff?
I think.
I hope. Any other questions? Lisa, I have one. I was going to discuss the errata sheet. That was a change to condition 156. Maybe Dave can discuss it when he comes up. Also, in your report, you talk about the max action, and you said that as of the report, they hadn't yet met. Apparently, they have in the interim. You said they shelved the project. I don't have the letter to which you referred. What did they do?
They, there was 3 members there present, and they decided after discussion to shelve the project for several reasons. And I apologize, I thought that you had, a copy of that letter had been available to you.
Maybe it's just, do you have a copy, Jim? Oh, okay, I don't.
Sorry, it was only through email that you received that. I can go get you a copy if you...
That's all right. Lisa can tell me what they said. And they shelved it. In other words, they didn't take action on it one way or the other.
They decided not to take action on it.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Any other questions? I guess not. Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
Dave Cook, you're here on behalf of the applicant, I assume?
You assume correctly. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Dave Cook with RCH Group, and I am here on behalf of HBT of Riolo Vineyards, managed by Town Development of Sacramento. HBT of Riolo Vineyards is investment entity LLC within Town Development. Just a quick background. Some of you have seen me up here before. Town is based in Milwaukee. No? Town is based in Milwaukee, began as a post-war home builder in 1949. Today they build in 7 regions, both coasts of Florida to Hawaii. And Jeff runs the West Coast division, which includes Northern California and Nevada at this point. If there are any questions, as regional manager, Jeff is here with me today, as well as Robert Johnson, who is our land planner and the R in RCH, and Jason Cole, who's with McKay and Somps, the engineering firm. So, Lisa, if I continue, will that take me to my slides? Doesn't.
It was supposed to.
It's supposed to. Maybe somebody could
Let me go check with
help me while I move forward on this. So this map before you today is the 4th tentative map the town has actually processed in the Dry Creek West Placer area. So this isn't their first barbecue, if you will. They have 3 other projects that they own and have processed tentative maps on. This is by far their largest acquisition in the area. And with their purchase of the 603 tentative map lots from JTS, they are now at nearly 900 lots in the West Placer Dry Creek area. So they're a player who is here for the long haul, and they're familiar with the area. They like the area, and with them, we look forward to doing more business out here in the West Placer area.
He's working on it, obviously.
That's fine. So with the ownership of this, Lisa walked you through the various property owners who are involved in this plan. In fact, town's acquisition does include nearly 2/3 of the properties out there. One of the first things that we did when town got involved was we contacted some of the neighboring property owners. I think it's important to let them know who the new player is in town, let them know town's intentions, our plans, town's plans. And so we contacted each and every neighbor. We've met with some of them, including Monty Lund to the north of Parcel J, the Elliott Family Partnership immediately west of Parcel J, as well as the Friswold group, who are located further west near the high-density parcel next to Watt Avenue and PFE. In fact, with the Elliott property, Mr. Johnson asked about the potential timing. Our crystal ball, like many developers these days, a little fuzzy as to when the market might be back. But we are talking with, and we have made a proposal to the Elliott family to help them move forward with their plans so that we've got the connectivity to Parcel J, and we work in an organized, methodical fashion back toward the west with this property. You're familiar, I assume that most of you were here when this specific plan was adopted last year, so you're familiar with the fact that the overall density for Riola Vineyards is right at 2 to the acre when you include the Dry Creek floodplain. And with the phasing map, luckily we're all familiar with these exhibits, so we really don't need them up there, I suppose. With the phasing map, as Lisa indicated, we are working from east to west. One of the first things that I did with Jeff when we were looking at acquiring the property, RCH was responsible for, yes, you do have the handout in front of you, which is in fact the slideshow. The pages aren't numbered, but if you want to get to the original concept plan and the phasing diagram, 3 pages in, that's 4 pages in, that's where we are right now. As you know, the original small lot tentative maps were processed and approved on the western end. And that is where JTS had contemplated starting, in part because of where they put their higher density product, in part because we believe they contemplated the involvement of Placer Vineyards and financial participation in the infrastructure that would be required to develop over on that side. Because of my involvement with projects in the past and town's awareness of things like the CFD1 lift station. Morning. Good morning. I'll move that out of your way. We're aware of the fact that there's readily available infrastructure in closer proximity to Parcel J than there would be with the western phases. To wit, you've got a water line which is stubbed to the south side of Dry Creek, which needs to only be extended south to Parcel J. And you've also got the existing lift station for which there is capacity to serve the wastewater, serve the sewer from Parcel J. Can I use the remote?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay, I can reach. Yeah, okay, great, thank you. So again, original tentative maps, Parcel J, water here, lift station not too far to the east from there. Sorry about the technical difficulties there. We just talked about this in terms of what we had looked at and in the due diligence. This is one of the key considerations in acquiring the property, knowing that particularly in these economic times, we might be able to get towns started without the need for constructing the lift station and the force main on the Riola Vineyard piece. Want to minimize the infrastructure cost, and there's another element. This particular property across the street on Walerga, Silver Creek, is owned by a related entity. Consequently, there are some additional efficiencies and benefits in potentially developing these concurrent. The water that needs to serve Riola Vineyards Parcel J provides the same benefit to Silver Creek, same with the sewer. And so it's just some very pragmatic issues there. So in terms of the proposed map and some of the elements, Lisa touched on these, got enhanced landscaping and other frontage improvements that will be coordinated with Silver Creek. A shared entry as in it's across the street, it's not shared per se. Not a feature that is one that's going to help the marketing necessarily, but this does include a SMUD substation as was required in the specific plan. Roughly a half-acre site. We've worked with SMUD to refine and deal with issues of access, etc. And then Lisa also alluded to this pedestrian crossing down here. Center had some concerns, given the change in phasing, that perhaps kids from this neighborhood might just hop across the street. And so we worked with them to arrive upon this signalized pedestrian crossing here, which will be triggered by kids coming to and coming home from school to stop the traffic, and with the cooperation and involvement of engineering and survey, I think we've kind of worked through those issues. So again, the project is consistent with the approved and certified EIR. This site represents 30 of the 525 acres in the entirety of the specific plan area. We've got 107 lots that are proposed. Your package will make reference to, I'm going to say 112 or 113, and if it was confusing for us at first, but that includes any open space lot, which is counted as a lot, but as Lisa said, 107 residential lots. Transferring the 20 lots from 2 other phase designated areas within the plan to parcel J, and that's provided for in the section 8.3 of the development agreement, of the specific plan. So 1 to 5 to the acre is the range within which this parcel could have density. We could be at 5,000, and we are at 7,200. So overall, about 3.5 to the acre. So those lots are 40% larger than the minimum which would be allowed. And in addition to that, just to summarize on the features, we've got the pedestrian crossing for the middle school. We've got the revised phasing, the SMUD substation. We're extending sewer to adjacent properties to the south. We'll stub it to the north for Lund, stub it to the west for Elliott to the extent that portions of that property can in fact gravity flow from here, and as well as stubbing it south to the church on the other side of PFE. We've got landscape improvements and bike lanes, and this will provide for internal connection to the adjacent properties. Let's talk about the MAC for a moment. I've attended the MAC 4 times this year. Started in March, and at that first meeting there were 5 council members present. Each of the 3 visits prior to last week's meeting, which was an action item, turns out to have been an inaction item, but each of those others were simply for information purposes. And each time, and you can see here, we had 5. I don't know if my presence or presentation caused the diminished attendance of MAC members, but at any rate, we had at a couple of these a pretty sizable audience and a fair amount of Q&A, but each time presented this project, answered some questions, and wrapped it up from there. The letter that they sent and the action they took really related to their perception of this project as a specific plan versus the community plan. And they read excerpts from the community plan and the letter. Some of you may have seen it, Mr. Brentnall, you had not. They wanted to shelve it, 1, due to a lack of full MAC in attendance. 2nd, the perceived expediting of the request. 3rd, the lack of District 1 Planning Commissioner. And finally, what they said was they had concern over density creep within the entire community plan area, which is contrary to the community plan. Now, I don't like to come out of a MAC with anything other than a recommendation for approval, so that was a little frustrating. But clearly, there was some confusion as to the fact that this specific plan embodies a set of decisions, findings, plans that go beyond that community plan, and I think it's safe to say that there's still a little bit of, shall we say, a harboring of frustration. We're just having a great technical time up here with all these things. A little harboring of frustration on their part with what it is that we're doing. So on that, just for a little review, we've got some of the regulatory framework within which we've approached this. There are other investment opportunities out there at the time. What was very attractive to HBT in town, aside from the fact that they're already doing business in this area, is the fact that there's a specific plan within which they knew the parameters of how they might go forward. So 65-450 through 457 in the government code section allows for preparation and adoption of the specific plans. This ties in with the general plan and the zoning ordinance, and that becomes the implementing land use regulatory framework. And that's the context within which we're working in, within which we've prepared and submitted this tentative map. So I think we all know that once the EIR has been certified, as long as we're consistent with that specific plan, and that's what we're implementing, then there is no additional CEQA review required. Now, to Commissioner Moss's question, there was one opinion in that perhaps there have been enough changes to background issues that would warrant new air pollution, air quality conditions. And that was an opinion of one entity that was not shared by staff or county council, nor by the applicant, I might add. So just very simply, we know we got the general plan, we got the community plan and the zoning code. We create the specific plan, and we've got the specific plan EIR. This is the previous entitlement framework. This is the current entitlement framework, and I really wish that we had anticipated the max issue, because we would have had this slide at last week's meeting, although I'm not certain to what extent that might have really addressed their concerns, frankly. So within that regulatory framework in the existing specific plan, we could have asked for up to 152 units at the 5,000 square foot minimum. And as it turns out, we're 40% larger on the lots, 70% of the maximum density allowed there. So clearly we're consistent with the specific plan. We're going to have a series of distinctive neighborhoods, and they're going to offer a range of quality housing in close proximity to the Dry Creek open space floodplain corridor. And we've worked closely with county staff. We submitted this in June, and we've been working closely with them over the past few months. And I think we're in agreement on all the conditions. We do have one final request on the errata, the reference condition 156. And the last portion of that sort of preamble, if you will, to the alphabetical items included, currently says subject to the review and approval of staff. And we would request that that say subject to the review and approval of staff as it relates to the applicable building standards. We just want to bracket the context of their review and approval. You got new building standards coming out in January with the Cal Green Code and with changes to Title 24. Those are the things which will require the homes built in here to address any issues of concern regarding air quality. So with that, we thank you for your time this morning. I respectfully request your approval of the project, and happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions for Dave? I'm confused by your comment on 156. You insert the words as it relates to applicable building standards. I thought I understood this until you inserted that. What are you trying to do? Because, I mean, you look at B here, we're talking about landscape maintenance and battery powered, blah, blah, blah. That's not a building standard.
Well, so those which would be in the context of building standards, such as high efficiency heating, window glazing, those sorts of things which are typically included in Title 24. So we're simply trying to put the review and approval in the context of building code. And I understand your point, and perhaps staff or county council have a better way to phrase it.
Okay, and with respect to the density, even though you're increasing the density here, you still only have the 933 units for the whole plan, so somewhere you're going to have a decrease in density.
Correct.
Before the smoke clears.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
And we have, to be clear, we've already identified the two phases from which those 20 lots have been pulled. And there's a revised table that addresses that.
Okay. Jeff?
These building standards that are contained in this, in 156, these, as stated here, are actually in excess to what current standards are?
Some of them are and some of them aren't. What we have in the DA is a requirement that the mitigation measures in the certified EIR be included as conditions of approval. And that's what we've done here. But since the adoption of that plan and the certification of the EIR, and as of the first of the year, we will have new building standards. Some of these aren't in the standards, and so what we're simply trying to do is address APCD's concern with adequate mitigation, but not leave it so wide open that it is simply, subject to review and approval of staff. We want to put it in the proper context. And to Commissioner Britnell's point, there may be a better way to say it, since there are some of these which are not pertinent to building codes.
Was that how are you going to allocate the resources that are put in as a result of the final EIR to this project? How do they find their way down, and how much of each of those is allocated to this specific project? And one of the is that, you look confused over there. At any rate, one of the findings that we'd have to make to approve this, should we decide to approve it, number 3 sort of speaks to that and says that we will do essentially that is all the mitigations that were required will find their way to this project. But somehow you don't know how much proportionately you're going to get stuck with. Will that be related to the number of units, or will it be related to the acreage, or how is that going to happen in the final analysis?
A lot of the things deal with a per lot, per residential unit basis, like the park fees, the various fees are per residential unit. So they would be.
Well, I tend to think of maybe major road improvements that are even off-site, traffic signals, other things that. How does their proportion find its way back, and is that arbitrary, or is it already been put in concrete? And are you comfortable with all that?
Now, let me try to answer that for you. I don't believe it's arbitrary. That the draft finance plan that was put together used a fairly typical methodology in terms of allocating cost on a per unit basis. As staff has indicated, there are certain things such as sewer that may not be allocated straight across the board because some may have the use of one facility and others not. So that's all part of the process that will be the refinement of the finance plan when we get to a point of implementation. We're comfortable with the methodology and approach to that. There are concerns we've got, particularly in this economic climate, as to whether or not the fee structure ends up being feasible, but we're a ways off from that. But we're comfortable with how these obligations get applied to the various home sites, the various homes throughout the specific plan. I think the finance plan does a good job of setting it up for it.
Thank you.
Any more questions or input? Lisa, did you have anything to say with respect to Mr. Cook's comments with respect to condition of approval number 156?
Mr. Chair, if I might, staff would recommend that the introduction to condition 156 be modified to say, prior to the issuance of any building permits for residences within this project, the applicant shall incorporate and implement the following measures or equally effective measures which at a minimum meet the state's Title 24 energy conservation requirements as applicable, and then leave the balance of the language in.
That sounds acceptable.
Into the design of the residences and so forth, subject to the approval of staff.
That is correct. That would remain.
And Dave, your comment on that?
That's acceptable.
Okay. Very good. Any other questions for Mr. Cook? I guess not. You did your usual fantastic job. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anybody from the public who would like to comment on this matter? If so, now is your chance to come and talk to us. I see nobody moving. In fact, everybody looks like deer in the headlights, not going to make one specific move lest I call on them like a teacher at school. Okay, well, with that, then we'll cut off the public input, bring it back to the commission for comment, discussion, or motions. Anybody?
See, I guess I'm looking at the street map, and to me, it looks like we're funneling a lot of residences down kind of some awkward pattern. to single intersections. And so I don't know what the answer is. I think when you look at the concept map, it looked like the flow of traffic was quite a bit easier, where we have a lot of residents that their road goes to the west, then they got to go to the north, and they got to go to the east, and then they got to go to the north again, and that seems like it's about 2/3 of the subdivision. So I don't know. I guess I'm still kind of thinking about it, but it seems like it's a very complex transportation plan, and I guess maybe I could get a little bit of input from engineering on, you know, how you analyze or assess whether this road network is really going to work for the residents in the neighborhood.
Engineering and surveying. The road sections are per the design in the Rio Vineyard specific plan, and they were set up to serve different community areas, different numbers of lots. So the applicant has proposed a design on this tentative map that adequately conveys traffic. The roads are sized adequately. It is a little different from the conceptual plan that was part of the Rio Vineyard specific plan, but that was conceptual. So we looked at the proposed road layout, and there's connectivity to the west and to the north, to the Lund parcel. And we didn't have an exception to it. We don't have any issues.
So at any rate, at someday when you have the connectivity to the west, it might ease it a little bit. But I think what I'm hearing you say is the number of, it looks like maybe, maybe 2/3, maybe a quarter of all the residences to the south of the main Street A are all going to funnel through the same road network. And so I guess I'm hearing you say that you've analyzed that number of residences.
Well, we tried to balance and look at what was looked at with a specific plan and what's proposed today, and they are a little different. But the main things were that there's the main arterial roadway, Street A, connection from Willerga Road, and that goes west to future development sites, and then slightly narrower roads branch off of that. So Street A is wider. Mm-hmm. It's more of the arterial. So the roads to the south of Street A are a little narrower. They're providing just kind of local neighborhood access. And then there are connections.
The question I'm asking is like Street B and portions of Street C, and I can't see what Street D. Those particular roads are going to handle the bulk of the residents in this area, it looks like.
Mr. Chair, if I might, you're correct, Mr. Johnson. They will handle the majority. We saw this from a staff perspective as an improved scenario. If you look at the concept plan that Mr. Cook had up there, with the approved project, there was one exit to Willerga Road. With this current proposal, there's one exit to Willerga Road. With the concept plan that you have on the wall there was one exit to the west, and now there will be 4 exits to the west. We see that as improved circulation. With the concept plan that's on the wall, there was no access onto PFE Road, and with the current proposal, there will be a signalized intersection on PFE Road. So we see this as an improved circulation plan to address the concerns you're talking about. It is challenging because this is the first segment to come in. We don't have that completed roadway network there. But when the balance of the projects come in, we think this is going to be an improved roadway circulation system for the entire area.
But I guess one of the questions I'd have is in the traffic modeling for the number of homes and the intersection, everything covers this first phase? Because that's what I've been hearing this
Yes.
through the whole.
That is correct.
Okay, because that doesn't.
Okay.
Okay.
Then, yeah. Let me hear that again. So at any rate, in terms of this first phase, from an engineering standpoint, and the number of homes that are going to be served by Street B, that's adequate,
The,
the number of residences for this first phase?
the width of the road, the capacity of the travel lanes, they're adequate for this type of density, I guess we'd say. And I see Stephanie standing up probably because the words traffic modeling were said, so she may have something else to offer.
Hi, good morning. Stephanie Holloway with Public Works. Excuse me, I have a little cold here today. Yeah, so basically when we did the analysis for the specific plan, we would have analyzed the full traffic impact from the full project at the specific access points. So essentially when we looked at the full map, we took roughly a fourth of the overall traffic, and we push it out on the Walerga Road access. So that access was analyzed actually as for more traffic than what you're going to see out of this project. So with the implementation of this project, you're under that threshold that we would have looked at for the access at that point. So
With the revised design?
with the revised design, yeah. And in fact, as Mr. Johnson stated, the original schematic layout had one access. That Street A was the only access for that this portion of the property to go to the west. With the additional access points that this layout has proposed, you're going to get a little bit more movement around within the subdivision, but we didn't feel that it changed the analysis of the overall access points onto the county road network. And just one point of clarification, the PFE road access with this property is and the signal there, the signal is meant specifically for pedestrian only. It's not a vehicular signal in any way.
Okay.
Stephanie?
Yeah.
One question. With this access and everything, whichever way they phased it, if they went right next door, they would have to get the access onto PFE.
If they were to build on the Elliott property first, is that what you're asking?
Well, I'm just saying, if they built this out, the next phase going in has to have basically probably finish the PFE access.
The Elliott property, the PFE access is kind of a funny access because the access actually falls on a joint property line. So it's the Elliott property and the property to the west of there. So there would be some easements that had to be obtained. But yes, with the development of that Elliott piece,
Any other development beyond this is going to require more road access. I mean,
correct.
Other access other than this.
Correct.
Because I think that's, one of the concerns.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah,
I
the
mean,
Walerga,
that
right.
to me is.
They'll have to comment.
So if essentially if that Elliott property went forward and they came in and requested, well, we only want to gain access through the existing access on Walerga and not punch through the PFE road access, we would more than likely need additional analysis to say whether the Walerga road access would handle that additional traffic or not. But we would probably push for consistency with the specific plan, which would be that access point. The other point I was going to bring up is Mr. Moss had asked about road improvements. I think it was, or maybe it was Mr. Stevenson. This project is required to do a design for expansion of the Walerga PFE road intersection. Any additional development within the property would trigger the threshold that we have in the DA to actually construct additional lanes on Walerga. So we do get a little bit of capacity there with the road improvements during the next development.
Okay, thank you, Steph. Any more questions?
You're welcome.
I guess not. Dave, you know the commission's rules, and the commission's rules are when your computer times out, you're out of here. So, however, we will waive it in this case. You were popping up there a minute ago. Did you have something you wanted to add on this issue?
I thought based on the questions, it might be helpful to have that exhibit up there. I think that Stephanie answered it, and it's not my computer, and it appears that the battery died, so I guess I'm done.
I guess so.
Oh, it's not your pacemaker.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions, motions?
Well, I will just comment, I guess. What my concern was, and I think Ken stated it pretty well, was that, it could be a while before the rest of this project develops. And so my concern was really just addressing, these people might be stuck with the road network that they have for a while. And so I just wanted to be assured that, at least from an engineering standpoint, it was adequate.
It sounds like in the long run, they'll be okay.
Yeah, in the long run, with the access, and if subsequent property owners are gonna be, further development to the west are gonna be required to build the PFE, then you got some circulation. So I guess, though I still am a little concerned about the pattern, you know, I think I'm okay with what I'm hearing.
If that's the case, you want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve the, well, let me get the piece of paper here. Gotta go through the. Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve the Development Review Committee's recommendation to approve the vesting tentative subdivision map, subject to the findings, the following findings, attached recommendation, conditions of approval. The CEQ findings, the vested tentative map, and I guess that's it.
The findings in our staff report, do you want to?
Staff
And
report
then
and,
the errata sheet that's been
yeah,
amended
the
again.
change as presented.
Okay, so you want to include the errata sheet, which is the change to condition 156 as orally modified by Michael Johnson here 10 minutes ago?
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought that was
That's
your
my
motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. 5-0. If there's anybody here for some reason who wants to appeal this, you have 10 calendar days to do it, and there's an appeal fee of $504, and you file right here at the Planning Commission desk. Is there anything else for the commission?
Dave, do you want these back?
If not, then we are adjourned until next year. Thank you, everybody.
Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Cheers.